Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and in today's video I'm going to be giving you the top 5 ways to improve at Dota. Obviously we play Dota for fun, it is a fun game, but really if we're being honest, it's a competitive game, we want to get better, we want to win, and that's what my channel's all about in some sense. Yes, I'm trying to teach new players about the game, about the heroes, that's kind of the goal of my channel, but really in learning about the heroes and learning about the game, what are we trying to do? We're trying to get better at the game, we're trying to compete, we're trying to gain MMR. That's kind of the focus of competitive games like this. So a lot of times people get into them and they just play games, they just spam pubs, and that can be fun, don't get me wrong, but if they do that and they're never really improving, it can get frustrating. And so if you don't really have anything to focus on, if you're not really nailing down, okay, how do I go about improving? What is the methodology I'm going to be using to actually get better at the game myself and not just spam pubs and just stay stagnant? If you don't have that in mind, if you're not thinking about that, you might not improve as rapidly as you otherwise would, or you might not improve at all. So that's what I'm going to be showing you here today in this video, is the top 5 ways to actually do that and actually get better at Dota in general. But before I get to number 5, I'm going to do like a pseudo number 6, and that is just learning all the mechanics. And this is just kind of like a baseline thing for any game really, whether it's Dota or even a shooter, just any game that has any kind of complexity. You have to know what the heroes do, you have to know what the items do, you have to know the general mechanics, like last hitting, denies, you have to know about towers and aggro and, you know, glyphs and roche and just all that kind of stuff. Armor, you know, magic damage, physical damage, all those things. Like the more knowledge that you get about those things, the better you're going to be in the long run, because you kind of have to have that stuff in order to improve. So that's really the first battle, is that you're going to start playing Dota and you're just going to have to absorb a ton of information. That's largely what my channel is about, is just giving that information to you in a much simpler and more condensed way, so that you don't just have to go in and play like 1,000 matches or 2,000 matches or whatever it is to learn all of that stuff. You can kind of get a shortcut here in the videos for, you know, heroes especially, because those are the big ones, honestly. You can kind of absorb what the items do just by reading it and stuff, but the heroes are the big one, because you need to know what they do and you can read that, but you actually don't really get all that information just from reading the number or looking at a small video. You have to have someone explain the theory and the concept and the idea behind what the hero does. That's why I do all these videos for newer players. And the other thing I will say also is that you don't need to know all the specific numbers, like damage numbers on items and things. You just need to know the general idea of what it does or what it's for, whether it's an item or a hero, because like I personally don't even have all that stuff memorized. I think a lot of like Immortal players and even pro players probably don't have every single damage number, every single stat number memorized. They just have a general feeling for what the thing does or how good it is. So don't get like too caught up in the weeds or the numbers specifically. You just have to know general ideas of what the game is and the mechanics and all that kind of stuff. So then starting off at number 5, we have play a ton of matches. So this obviously kind of builds into that pseudo 6 like I was talking about, but you still need to play a ton of matches, whether or not you know the game or not. Like if you're learning it, you do need to play a ton of matches. If you already kind of know the game, you still need to play a ton of matches. You just need to focus in on what exactly you're doing. So if you don't have the time to spam the game, play a ton, you're not really going to get better. Maybe you'll improve over time, but it'll be very slow. So you still have to play a ton. That's just like a given requirement to get better at the game, and you have to play a ton kind of in a short period of time, because, you know, patches change a lot of stuff. It also kind of ingrains all those things into your memory, into your second nature. You kind of don't really have to think about it anymore. Your hands just do it because you've played so much, you've played this hero a ton. You're kind of just ingraining all that stuff into the pathways in your brain that allow you to do stuff and think about other bigger picture strategic things. So playing a ton of matches is a requirement at the base level if you want to get better at this game. Then at number 4, we have watch your own replays. And I know this is something that a lot of different YouTubers and Dota people say all the time, but they don't really explain it or, you know, kind of get into the details of what this really means or how do you even do this, because you can't just watch your replay like passively and get information from it. Like that's really not enough. And you don't need to watch every single game. There are certain games where you know why you lost. Like there was a big team fight or something, and you know this is the reason that you lost. You understand what you did wrong, or you understand that you may have done done well in your lane, but the other lanes got so dumpstered that was really nothing you could do. And so watching that replay, there's not really much you're going to get out of it. But a lot of times, if you feel like the game is close or there's big things where you don't really understand what happened or you don't understand why you lost the fight or these kinds of things, you need to be looking at your replay to say, is there anything I could have done better in these situations where the fight was close but we lost? That's what you really need to be looking at. And so you don't need to watch the whole replay, just those times that are very important where you feel like the game could be swung either way. It's also very important sometimes to just watch your laning stage or watch farming patterns and compare them to other players, whether you're watching those other people's replays or you're watching streams or something, to compare yourself to like a pro player and be like, do I look like that? Or what looks different between me and them, and how can I change that? And looking at that kind of short 10-minute segment and trying to really figure out what the differences are or what the things are you can do to improve to not die. And that's the other thing, that's the biggest thing too, is if you want to get the most out of your replays, the short, quick, easy way is look at all your deaths. Just go, okay, here's a death, here's a death, here's a death. Figure out why you died and if there's something you could have done to prevent that death, and if it would be good to not die. Sometimes it's like, okay, that's a fine death. It was a team fight. We won the team fight. I used all my spells. That was fine. It's not a big deal. Other times, it's a really bad death. I got way too aggressive. I was caught out. I was ganked, all that kind of stuff. So if anything, if you want to look at your deaths, that's the biggest way to watch replays and improve and learn from all of the past mistakes that you've made. And at number 3, we have focus on one thing to improve on at a time. And this is a problem for a lot of people because they go spamming pubs. They know generally about the game. They watch their own replays, but they don't really focus on anything. They just say, I want to get better. I'm going to try to get better this game. But it's like, well, what does that really mean? What are you focusing on? What are you actually trying to do in the game that ends up making you play better? And so I think a very good example, or an easy example, is some kind of mechanic like tread switching. If you don't know how to do it, let's say, and you're playing anti-mage, going into a game and saying, every time I blink, I'm going to switch to int treads. That's a very good, easy, and straightforward thing that you can improve upon at every single game when you play it. And then you know after a few games, you're getting better because now it becomes second nature. It's ingrained in your brain to actually do this, and you don't really have to think about it anymore. That's something that you can easily improve upon. There's other things too that are a little bit more vague, but something like, I'm not going to die in the laning stage. That can be for pretty much any hero. It's like really focusing on not dying. Now, sometimes that means that you're going to play too safe, or you're not going to get as aggressive as you otherwise should be. But if you're a hero or a person that gets too aggressive and dies a lot, that can be something where you scale back. The other thing on the flip side, you could say, I'm going to really try to focus on harassing more, really getting good at harassing and punishing the enemy. Maybe that means you die a little bit too much, but you see how focusing on very specific things that you think you need to improve on can actually frame how you're playing the game every time you queue up. So it's not just that you're going in, you're saying, I want to get better. You actually have to think about what you're doing and what you're going to focus on in each game to actually improve your play and end up getting better. Otherwise, you're going to stay stagnant. And then at number 2, this is something I tell every single person that I give advice to about how to actually improve at the game or even learn the game in general. And that is, you need to spam one role and only a few heroes. Ideally, you would spam one hero, but that's not really viable because, you know, sometimes it gets banned or sometimes you have to play other roles. And so this isn't something where you're going to be doing it every single game, but for the most part, you have to have a focus. Just like when you go into games, you need to have a focus on what you're improving on in that game. You need to have a focus in terms of roles and heroes, because that is really how you're going to learn the game. Because just like I said with understanding what the heroes do, understanding the items, just like I said with improving at the game and focusing on what you're doing, you need to focus on a hero because that allows it to become second nature. So when you're playing, you know, anti-mage, like I said before, you no longer really have to think about blinking and farming. You're thinking about, okay, when am I getting ganked? When am I strong? Who am I going on in the fights? You know, who am I blowing up because they're an int hero? Who am I avoiding? Who should I not really be hitting? Who kills me? All that kind of stuff is stuff that you're thinking about on the map or in fights. That is the strategic stuff that makes Dota so good and also complicated. And that's the stuff you can only really get to once you really understand the hero at a base level. Once you're decent at farming, once you're decent at clicking all the buttons, once you're decent in the laning stage, then you can start to kind of expand into the more strategic aspects of the game that allow you to get better. Because if you're switching roles all the time, if you're switching heroes all the time, you're always just going to be focusing on kind of relearning the basics, relearning what the skills do. And that doesn't mean that you don't know what the skills do at their base level, but your brain is going to have to spend more time actually focusing on clicking the buttons and kind of understanding what's going on. And you're not really going to have that ingrained part of you where now you can can start thinking about the bigger picture. And that's what you want to drive to, is always being able to think about the bigger picture, because that's when you can improve the most at Dota, because a lot of what Dota comes down to is the bigger picture. Like, yes, people focus on the laning stage and the mechanics and the heroes, and these are all the flashy things that you look at in, you know, pro games or highlights or all that kind of stuff. But really the core and meat of the game are strategic decisions, positioning, understanding all of those bigger picture things about the game, like matchups and all that kind of stuff. So that is number 2, spamming one role and only a few heroes. That's just so key to getting better at the game. And then at number 1, the best way to improve, the number 1 thing that helps you improve quickly, is getting a coach, somebody that is better than you, to give you direct and specific advice for your situation. Because it doesn't matter if you play the same role and the same hero as somebody else, you're going to have different problems or different things to improve upon. And sometimes if you don't really understand the game, or you don't know what you're doing wrong, it's going to be hard for you to get better, and then you're going to have somebody else come in and tell you, okay, these are the things that you need to focus on. These are the glaring issues. Because let's say, I've been using anti-mage as the example. Let's say you're playing anti-mage and you're the carry player, and this is what you're focusing on. Well, maybe you are great at the laning stage. You just crush it in the lane, and then your farm drops off, and you just have to focus on farming. Or maybe your farm doesn't drop off, and your team fighting is just awful. You know, or maybe it's the reverse. Somebody else, their laning is terrible, and then they catch up, and they have great late game team fighting, but their lane is so bad that oftentimes they set themselves out on the wrong foot. They start the game so poorly that is what determines whether they win or lose. There's so many different factors, even in the same role with the same hero, that you need to get specific advice to help you improve as quickly as possible. And that's why I'm announcing free coaching to anybody that wants it. So if you want coaching, if you're basically ancient or below, 4K or below, I will definitely be able to help you improve. I've gotten people all the way from Herald up to 4K. So go in the description of this video, click on the link to the Discord. I will be coordinating all of the coaching sessions from there, and I will mainly be streaming coaching every Thursday night, 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. That's kind of the main slot I'm going to be picking for now. As we get more demand, if more people want it, I will expand that to other times. And if you don't want a direct coaching session where I'm streaming it and talking to you, you can also request a replay review in the Discord as well. And really, that's always been the reason that I make these videos, to help people improve and learn at the game in a faster, more efficient way than just kind of trying to do it themselves. And so that's really what a coach is, in a very tailored and specific sense. Looking at your games and looking at what you specifically need to do to improve. There really isn't a replacement for a coach. So I really look forward to talking to you guys and helping you guys improve at the game. It's awesome to look and analyze these replays and help you guys get better. I really look forward to that. So again, go in the description, click on the link to the Discord and sign up there, message me there. I'll have a space where you can request coaching, and I really look forward to it, guys. So that's the video. As always, if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all those kinds of things. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.